Good evening. It's Thursday, the 2nd of October, and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Safety alert. Tragic accident at Chennai thermal power plant kills 9 workers, raising safety concerns. Environment icon. World mourns pioneering conservationist Goodall, renowned for chimpanzee research and global advocacy. Youth support. Teen volunteers offer a vital lifeline to struggling youth through national hotline programs.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Prithika Sivakumar.
Good evening once again. A tragic accident occurred at the Ennore Special Economic Zone supercritical thermal power project in Tamil Nadu, India. A steel arch under construction collapsed, resulting in the deaths of 9 workers from Assam and injuries to 1 other. The incident has raised concerns about safety standards at construction sites.
The accident took place at the Ennore Special Economic Zone in Uranambedu, Thiruvalur district near Chennai. A 45-meter high steel arch, part of the coal handling unit's roof, collapsed unexpectedly, leading to the fatalities. The workers were reportedly engaged in installing the arch when the structure gave way, causing them to fall from a significant height. The deceased workers, all from Assam, were employed as contractual laborers at the site. 1 additional worker sustained injuries and was promptly transported to Government Stanley Medical College Hospital in Chennai, where he is reported to be in stable condition. Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin expressed deep sorrow over the incident and announced compensation for each deceased worker's family. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also conveyed condolences and sanctioned an ex gratia from the Prime Minister's National Relief Fund for the families of the deceased and for the injured. The incident has prompted calls for enhanced safety measures and oversight at construction sites to prevent such tragedies in the future.
Afghan diaspora communities in Germany have expressed deep concern over the Taliban's recent nationwide internet blackout, which has left millions in Afghanistan without access to essential services. The blackout has disrupted communications, education, and humanitarian aid, prompting Afghan diplomats in Bonn to resign in protest.
The Taliban's internet and mobile connectivity shutdown, initiated on the 29th of September 2025, led to severe disruptions across Afghanistan. According to NetBlocks, connectivity dropped to around 1%, affecting both internet and mobile phone services nationwide. The shutdown has paralyzed banking, commerce, and aviation, leaving the country almost entirely cut off from the outside world. At least 14 flights were cancelled yesterday, and many others were listed as unknown in statutes due to the lack of communication capabilities. The internet blackout has disproportionately affected Afghan women who have relied on online platforms for education, remote work, and communication. Hamid Obaidi of the Afghanistan Journalist Support Organization stated that the Taliban has cut a lifeline, especially for women. This disruption is seen as another blow to education in Afghanistan, a country where schooling has already been severely restricted, particularly for women and girls. In response to the Taliban's actions, Afghan diplomatic staff in Bonn have resigned, calling the Taliban illegitimate and protesting Germany's decision to allow 2 Taliban representatives to work as diplomats in the country. Former Afghan consul Hamid criticized the decision, stating that it poses a serious threat to the security of citizen-sensitive documents and information.
Japan's Agricultural Minister Shinjiro Koizumi engaged in informal discussions with his ASEAN counterparts in Manila today, focusing on agricultural sustainability and food security. The meeting, part of the 47th ASEAN Ministers on Agriculture and Forestry, also addressed climate change impacts on the sector.
The AMAF meeting underscored the importance of enhancing collaboration among ASEAN member states to address shared agricultural challenges. Discussions centered on improving food security mechanisms, advancing sustainable farming practices, and promoting regional trade in agricultural products. The Philippines, as the host nation, emphasized the need for unified positions on global agricultural issues. A significant portion of the talks was dedicated to the adverse effects of climate change on agriculture in Southeast Asia. Ministers deliberated on strategies to enhance the resilience of farming systems, including the adoption of climate-smart agricultural practices and the development of policies to mitigate environmental impacts. Minister Koizumi's participation highlighted Japan's commitment to regional agricultural development. He advocated for the lifting of bans on Japanese agricultural exports such as shine muscat grapes to facilitate broader market access. Additionally, Koizumi emphasized the importance of international competitiveness and the need for technological advancements in agriculture to ensure food security.
North Korea has pledged unwavering support for Russia's actions in Ukraine, with Defense Minister No Kwang-chol affirming Moscow's right to defend its sovereignty. This commitment was echoed at the UN General Assembly, where North Korea reiterated its stance on nuclear deterrence and sovereignty.
North Korean Defense Minister No Kwang-chol met with his Russian counterpart, Andrei Belousov, and pledged full support for Russia's war in Ukraine, calling it a defense of sovereignty and territorial integrity. The two ministers then attended the unveiling of a monument honoring North Korean partisans who fought alongside Soviet troops in World War II. Russia called it a symbol of brotherhood forged in fire and blood. The alignment was also clear in New York earlier in the week. At the UN General Assembly on Monday, North Korea's Vice Foreign Minister Kim Sun-kyung declared that Pyongyang will never give up its nuclear weapons.
We will never give up nuclear power, which is our state law, national policy, and sovereign power, as well as the right to existence. Under any circumstances, we will never walk away from this position.
Russia echoed that message. At a press conference marking Moscow's presidency of the UN Security Council, Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia called North Korea's possession of nuclear weapons an open secret and a reality.
You may like it or not like it, but this is the reality. The reality justified by the threats that the DPRK, they really feel threatened by what is happening around the Korean Peninsula, by the activities, military activities, provocative activities.
He said those threats stem from what he called provocative military activities by South Korea, the United States, and Japan.
Time for a short break now. We'll be right back with more world news. Welcome back. European leaders convened in Copenhagen today to address escalating security concerns following recent drone incursions over Denmark, Poland, and Estonia. Discussions centered on establishing a continent-wide drone defense shield and deliberating the use of £140 billion in frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine's defense efforts.
Starting in Copenhagen today, European leaders are facing a defining security test. After Russian drones breached NATO airspace, the EU is weighing a continent-wide drone wall and whether to unlock billions in frozen Russian assets to help Ukraine. At a high-security summit in Copenhagen, EU leaders debated building a joint drone defense shield to protect the continent from Russian incursions. The proposal would connect sensors, jammers, and interceptors across multiple states. This follows drone flights over Denmark, Poland, and Estonia, incidents that heightened concerns over the vulnerability of Europe's skies. NATO says low-cost drones are exposing a costly gap in Europe's defenses. France and Sweden are already sending anti-drone systems to support Denmark, but analysts caution that building a drone wall will be expensive and technically complex. Alongside security talks, EU leaders are divided over using 140 billion euros in frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine. Germany backs the plan, while France and Belgium warn it could spark lawsuits and financial instability.
Violent clashes erupted across Morocco yesterday as youth-led protests over health and education reforms intensified. Organized by the grassroots movement, Gen Z 212 demonstrations in cities like Rabat, Agadir and Oujda turned deadly, with at least 2 reported fatalities. Security forces responded with force, resulting in numerous injuries and arrests.
After a crowd disperses in the city of Oujda in the northeast of Morocco, a police van drives straight into protesters, injuring one of them. An incident that happened on the 4th day of national protests, which show no sign of dying down. Initial peaceful gatherings called for a reform of the education system and improvements to healthcare, which protesters say the government has been neglecting. Protesters, by now greater in number, on Tuesday night clashed with security forces in several cities across the country. Demonstrators threw stones at police, who responded with dozens of arrests. Here close to Agadir, vehicles were overturned or set alight. Violence that Morocco's Association for the Defence of Human Rights condemned.
La violence et la répression.
The violence and repression we've seen in the past few days are really unprecedented. For the first time since at least the 1980s, the youth can't even protest. They're being repressed, dispersed before they can even assemble and chant their slogans.
The protest movement's organisers, the little-known collective Gen Z 212, have also called for calm. And in a communique issued on Tuesday night, Morocco's coalition government said it would listen to the protesters' demands and that it was willing to respond in a positive and responsible manner.
French authorities have arrested 2 crew members of the Russian tanker Bourke, suspected of being part of Russia's shadow fleet. The arrests follow a French Navy operation off the western coast of France. The crew is under investigation for failing to verify the vessel's nationality and for non-compliance with official directives.
Part of the so-called shadow fleet involved in the Russian oil trade, this tanker, hit by EU sanctions, is now the subject of a French investigation. Known under various names like Bourke, Pushpa and Pifos, the vessel has been anchored off France's Atlantic coast for several days. The probe was launched over the crew's failure to justify the nationality of the vessel and refusal to cooperate. While attending an EU summit on Wednesday, the French president praised prosecutors' actions.
There were some very serious mistakes made by this crew, which justify the fact that the case is now being investigated. But this highlights the presence and reality of a phenomenon that we've been describing and denouncing for a long time. We have between 600 and 1,000 ships operating this way, enabling Russian oil to be transported even when it's banned.
The European Union has slapped sanctions on hundreds of tankers used by Russia to circumvent oil export curbs imposed after its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. According to Macron, the shadow fleet finances 40% of Moscow's war effort. Despite its aims to cripple the Russian economy, the EU still imports Russian-made crude, notably from India. Shipping data show Bourke left a Russian port on September 20th before navigating close to Denmark around the 23rd. The vessel's path has aroused suspicions that it was involved in mystery drone flights that disrupted air traffic in Denmark between September 22nd and 28th. Macron, however, stopped short of linking the tanker to the incursions, saying it wasn't for him to do so. The same vessel was detained and then released by Estonia in April, at the time known by its previous name Koala. Authorities said it wasn't sailing under a flag, a violation of maritime law.
A devastating incident unfolded in northern Ethiopia today as a scaffolding collapsed at the Menjar Shenkora Arerti Mariam Church in Arerti during the annual Virgin Mary Festival. At least 36 people have been confirmed dead, with over 200 injured. Rescue operations are ongoing and authorities have declared a national period of mourning.
In Ethiopia, scaffolding collapsed at a church packed with worshippers, killing at least 36 and injuring more than 200. The scaffolding collapsed at Menjar Shenkora Aredi Mariam Church in the Amhara region. It happened during the annual Virgin Mary Festival, one of the country's largest religious gatherings. Witnesses say worshippers had climbed the wooden scaffolding to view murals when it suddenly gave away. Hospitals in the region are overwhelmed, with some victims transported to Addis Ababa for treatment. Local officials warn the death toll could rise as rescue and recovery operations continue. Authorities have launched an investigation while Ethiopia's government has declared a period of national mourning.
Renowned primatologist and conservationist Jane Goodall has passed away at 91. Known for her groundbreaking research on chimpanzees in Tanzania, Goodall transformed our understanding of animal behavior and human connection to nature. She continued her advocacy for environmental protection until her recent death in California during a speaking tour.
It began in the jungles of Africa. No university degree or formal training, just compassion and calm.
It's perfectly possible to be incredibly emotionally involved, feeling great empathy for your subject.
At 26 years old, Jane Goodall gave up her possessions to live among the chimps. For decades, recording discoveries that would change humanity's understanding of our closest living relatives.
In those early days, no one knew anything about the behaviour of chimps in the wild, so wasn't I lucky? Everything I saw and observed was new and exciting.
A key discovery, chimpanzees make and use tools, a skill we once thought only belonged to humans. Here, they're seen fishing for termites.
This is a really exciting moment for me.
As the only woman in her field, Jane Goodall faced opposition, but the details she documented now constitute the largest scientific database in the world for the species.
I was not taken very seriously by many of the scientists. I was known as a geographic cover girl.
Conservation became her focus, a heartwarming moment on camera, releasing chimp Wounda back into the forest, who stops to say goodbye.
Through a knowledge of the chimpanzees and their behaviour, I truly believe we can learn quite a lot about our own behaviour.
Jane Goodall spent her later years as an activist for the protection of chimpanzees, now an endangered species. Founding the Jane Goodall Institute, a youth program running in 130 countries, and travelling the world as a UN messenger for peace to address the environmental crisis. Her passing announced at one of the events she was due to headline.
We'll stand together for a moment of silence in tribute to a world leader, to an extraordinarily generous, gentle, and wise human being.
Tributes to at Taronga Zoo. Jane first visited in 1997 and continued to make regular visits down under until her death.
Let's go in for a short commercial break. More world news coming right after this. Welcome back. A Kentucky nurse's quick thinking saved a raccoon after it ingested fermented peaches from a nearby distillery's dumpster. Misty Combs administered CPR to the unconscious animal, reviving it. The raccoon, named Otis Campbell, was later released back into the wild, showcasing compassion and swift action in wildlife rescue.
Misty Combs from Kentucky stepped in to help when a family of raccoons got into some trouble.
That morning at work, someone had said, "Hey, there's a raccoon that's acting strange out in the parking lot." Sure enough, here was this big raccoon running around the parking lot, and it was making like a chitter-chatter noise. And we were like, what is wrong with this raccoon? He went over to a dumpster, which just happens to be behind Kentucky Mist Moonshine. And you know, that maternal instinct in me was like, I'm gonna give her babies. So I grabbed a shovel, and I really didn't even think about it, but I just grabbed it and like sort of like threw her baby gently now, and it ran over and joined its mom. And when I grabbed it by the tail, it was soaking wet, it reeked of moonshine, it was It had a lot going on, but it was full of water. And I just all of a sudden, I was like, I've got to do CPR on this little raccoon. Not only did my maternal instincts kick in, but my nursing instincts kicked in. Now, I have no idea how to do CPR on a raccoon. And believe me, a lot of people told me I have no idea how to do CPR on a raccoon. But I did my best at that time, and it actually worked. We got it to breathing again. The CPR worked, and I sat and beat on it and tried to get the fluids out of its lungs.
Not only was the raccoon in distress, it was wasted.
Every evening in Los Angeles, a dedicated group of trained teen volunteers convenes at the Teen Line offices. This national hotline connects young individuals in crisis with empathetic peers, offering support, guidance, and a listening ear during challenging times.
It's a call, a text, or an email without judgment.
I'm going to use that one right there.
Yeah. Where teenagers are on both ends of the line.
Talking to a teen, especially an anonymous teen, we're not going to try to solve your problems. We're going to mainly empathize and hear you out.
Brooke is 16. She's a volunteer in Los Angeles at Teen Line, a hotline for teenagers in crisis across the world. And reach-outs have been on the rise.
Yeah, I have a couple of resources for them.
This year alone, they're expected to connect with over 10,000 teens.
A lot of people, when they hear Teen Line or hotline, they think, oh, suicide call, crisis call. But so many of my calls have been about relationship issues, school stress, anxiety, maybe a fight with their parents.
Oftentimes, she can relate.
For a lot of teens, I know that they had a hard time during the pandemic, which is also what drew me to Teen Line. So I thought that if there's some way that I could help teens not feel that way, then I want to do it.
And it's working.
And with that, we come to the end of today's edition of World News Tonight. With the hopes of seeing you again, I'm Prithika Sivakumar, and we'll leave you tonight with the visuals of dazzling fireworks lighting up Hong Kong on its National Day. Also, don't forget to send us your feedback through email at feedback.8024english@derana.lk or via WhatsApp at 076 805 7933. Thank you for watching. Have a very good night.